Awesome. So, welcome everyone. Going to get started. So, as usual, please, if you could, sign in on the sign in sheet. And if you have any questions or comments that you want to add to that, please do so. I'll be sharing this a couple of times and reminding folks to sign in if they have not. Um, Hope everybody is doing well. I'm going to do a quick overview the um, of the agenda. And as I said, we're excited about a couple of these items. Get a little welcome from our co-leads leadership. And then Nicole is going to give an update on the tracking tool. We'll get we'll have a couple of people reporting back on the freight conference that just happened. That sounds like it went very well. We'll be doing some work around the community engagement plan. So we've got a draft of the community engagement plan, and I'll give some instructions around that. We're going to do an overview and then we're going to come back. We've got a couple of folks, Gavin, Maria, and Ms. Margaret, giving an update on the West Oakland link. And then as usual, this is like kind of a regular section that we have for Miss Margaret and all of her, because she's, on the radio, on the news, like at least a couple of times a week. And so we always take a break, to
I was sitting at my house, or sitting at my desk, minding my own business.
I know, I know. Yes, and she's very modest and humble, but we really thought that this one was also important because this is kind of slightly different than the air quality stuff that we've been talking about. It's the sacrifice zones and talking about global warming and sea level rise and that sort of thing. So that was there's going to be 2 links that we'll share there. So again, okay, we'll start with Nicole.
Welcome, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you will also have sharing privileges as well.
okay, welcome, everyone. In terms of the tracking tool, we introduced it in September, and since then, we've made huge strides. And I'll show you what that looks like. Can you send me to the next slide, Randolph?
Oh, okay. You also have sharing privileges, but yes.
I'm on my personal computer, so
gotcha.
I can't have a Benghazi situation here for me.
Got you covered.
Okay, so let me actually drop the website. All these things are live, so thanks, Jess, for making this vision, this dream, a reality. Click on it so you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. But all of our strategies are now trackable, right? So you can see where they fall, right? So I'm going through each of the 4 categories so you can see where we are, right? So we have 35 land use strategies, right? And when you're on the website, you can see a description of the strategy, the lead agency, and progress with an update, okay? Caveat here is updates are from sometime last year, 2021. So I just want to highlight that for you. But we will get that updated in hopefully by November, so you guys can see where each strategy is in terms of progress, in terms of success. If we look at strategy 78 for land use, right, that's a big old star right there, right? It's complete, right? So good job, City of Oakland. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're on to freight and port. Okay, this is something that's also on WOCAP's website, right? You can see the largest sources of air pollution in West Oakland here. Okay, so we're working on reducing the impact, right, that all of these sources have on the West Oakland community. Next slide, please. Okay, so port and freight, right? That's a bulk of the 89 strategies. So very, very important work there. Okay. We have here, right, with the Circle CARB, right, as a lead agency, currently unreported. And again, this data has not been updated. Okay. So reporting requests will be going out in the next week, right, to lead agencies so that right, you can get that star, right, by your strategy. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, we have, let's see, health and living buffers, right? That's 19 of our strategies, okay? Right, and if you can see the progress, right, we have, let's see, started, right, implemented, mostly implemented, and completed. Next slide, please. Okay, bike, walk, and transit, right? 11 strategies, right? And things that are circled here, right? February 2021, 2021, 2021. So again, apologies for that dated information, but now that we have Airtable, right? And it's live and it's on our website, this will become a more dynamic type of tracking tool in terms of completing successfully, right? The 89 strategies in our WOCAP plan. Okay, next slide, please. Right, for those of you who like charts, such as myself, right, we have this here, right, and you can see where the bulk of the strategies are in terms of problem area, right? So we have land use, let's see, port and freight, okay, total strategies by emission source, completion progress, right? That yellow, we still have a long way to go, but we're gaining ground and that's really exciting. Okay, and our last slide, we updated our steering committee members, right? So we have all of our folks listed here. If you are seeing your name and you're surprised, please send me a message. If you don't see your name and you're surprised, please send me a message. If you want to see your name, please send me a message, okay? And moving forward, right, all of our recordings, agendas, presentations will also live on the WOCAP website for easy access. Questions, applause, praise, what's next, anything?
Nicole just wanted somebody to call her. That sounded kind of thirsty, but that's okay.
I know, I'm like, hey, so everyone on this call, right, all 29 of you?
Yeah.
I want to thank the staff and Nicole and Jess and Allison and a bunch of folks have helped us pull this together, and it's really a huge step forward because since we started implementation, we really haven't been able to look at where we are, and this tool is going to help everybody, us, the steering committee, the general public, know what fantastic work is actually getting done. It's really amazing to me to think we wrote a plan that's mostly voluntary, and we have all these different agencies grabbing these things, the city and the port, and working to implement them. So we either have a lot of influence or we put the right things in our plan, and they aligned well with where things are headed. So I want to give a round of applause and a big thank you to everyone who's been working to pull this together.
I also thank Kalila Haynes from the city of Oakland. She sent me her full report of all of the strategies that the city of Oakland is responsible for. So I will update that in Airtable, but I greatly appreciate her quick turnaround and her clear communication in my asking process. And again, to Jess Sand for making all of this possible, because my original plan was to mail everyone an update of all of the 89 strategies. She vetoed that, and so we're using technology instead.
And Jess, would you like to take a victory lap?
Thank you. I do want to just invite everybody to share any feedback you have as you take some time to digest these pages. There's a fair amount of information on the website now. And I think as you go through it, you may have questions come up, or it might trigger, interest in sort of diving deeper into different areas and helping us understand how you could see yourself using this material as you continue your work on the steering committee would be really helpful. So you can reach out and send your feedback either directly to Nicole or myself. I'm at jsand@woap.org, and I can drop my email in the chat. But feel free, and if you want to sort of spend more time with it one-on-one, I'm happy to, I'm available for that as well.
Brian?
Jess or Nicole, is it possible to show it live? I mean, I was looking at it
I
today.
can share my screen if Nicole doesn't have that.
It'd be nice to,
yeah. Let me
because the
see
flow
if
of
I
it is
have
so nice. The way you've put it together, I really think
Thank
people
you.
should see it.
All right, let me pull up, see if I have permissions.
You are good to go.
Awesome, thank you. Make sure I pull up the right screen. Stand by.
Always important.
I have like 40 tabs open, so you never know what you're gonna get. So yeah, so this is the landing page. The way we've structured this is, you'll find it in the main menu under Owning Our Air. And it's featured on the homepage as well, so you can get right to here pretty directly. And what we've done is we've sort of stuck with those early subcommittee breakout categories because it felt like a really helpful way, especially from a public perspective, to be able to see sort of wrap our heads around how these are, what the different approaches are. So we've got these different categories, and these are the links that will lead you into some of the excerpts that Nicole shared. So if I click on land use, for example, I'll just open it in a new tab. But if I click on land use, it takes me to a little overview of the relevance of that category, why this is important, whether it's, how it's tied to air pollution. And it has a little bit of interactive features so you can kind of explore the history. And then you can get into the strategies. And what we're doing is we're using Airtable on the back end. So this is a database that lives separately from the website. We can update it fairly easily using spreadsheets and stuff like that people are familiar with in the different agencies that you're working in. But you can filter and sort this stuff. Right now we're displaying just the information that Nicole shared, the agency lead progress report, and a qualitative update. We have a lot more data on each of these strategies in our database. And so as we complete that information and collect more data from you all, from the agencies that are going to be tracking a lot of this stuff, we can feed that in here and it'll automatically populate this material, and we can adjust what we display on the website. So it's pretty flexible, which is really nice. And I can click into this if I want to see the whole thing. And then if you keep going, you'll see the steering committee activity. This is also available on the landing page itself. So if I were to keep going here, this is where you get back to the landing page. This is where you get the strategy breakdown that Nicole shared, and we can update these. Right now, this is manually updated. We'll come up with a more automated approach once we sort of land on exactly what kind of information we want to be tracking at this level. And you can download the full report, and you can see the steering committee activity. And this, I think, will be hopefully exciting for you all. But this really actually gives a whole breakdown. So we'll be sharing the meeting information. So if you ever forget when's the next meeting, what did we talk about in the last meeting, you can come to the website and actually find that information super easily in theory. So you get a little recap. Of course, y'all are featured. And then we have actually the actual meeting recordings embedded. We're still waiting to find the July recording. And you'll get some meeting notes and slides, et cetera, to go with that, so that if you miss a meeting or whatnot, you can always go back and revisit. So I think that's pretty much everything. If folks have questions or anything, feel free to share.
Yeah,
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Very nice. Thank you, Jess. And I saw Fern went straight to the straight to the question is like, can we get qualitative data? I think that's the goal eventually. We wanted to do this first layer of quantitative is like, what are we doing? Who's engaged? What things are being worked on? And then I think there's still work to do to figure out what are our qualitative metrics. What would we measure and put on the website relative to these projects? And so that's something we hope to begin conversations with all of you in the coming year. But our first goal was just to have a place where you can go and look at it and say, oh, that's what's happening? That looks pretty good, right? Or why aren't we working on this one? So that's our goal. That was our goal for this quarter, to get this thing up and running. And then it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that came up in the last meeting in September was this question of how do we ladder up to the high level? Like, we have these goals for this big goals for the strategies, but how do we actually ladder up? Each of those strategies may have a number of different projects tied to them, and each of those projects will probably need to be, we'll have different sets of metrics that will need to be tracked, and that becomes a huge data tracking project in and of itself. And so figuring out how to prioritize that, I think, is going to be really crucial, and figuring out who's capable of tracking what and reporting on what, and how do we normalize the data across strategies so that we're measuring in the same units when appropriate and that kind of stuff. So that's all for ongoing discussion
For the future. I don't want to, one thing, my last comment, I don't want to miss recognizing the leap this is in our capacity as a community organization leading this 617
That's
work.
a long, because I was like, from LA to Pasadena was what, 45 minutes?
Yeah, I'm not sure who that is.
I think.
Oh,
The freeway was like 45 minutes.
Ms. Cook, I
And
think
okay, so
you've
I'm Long Beach, that's adding on what.
there you go. Thank you. I thought that was a comment, but it's a long way from LA to Pasadena. Long way to Tipperary. But I don't want us to miss that. This is not a small thing. This just didn't come out of a box, right? This was, the West Oakland working with partners, creating something that doesn't really exist quite yet in the AB 617 world. And so I'm really proud of the work. I didn't do it. I'm really proud of the work that our staff and our partners have done to take this big step in being able to track the success of these AB 617 projects. I'm hoping other communities will either learn it or grab it from us or do something, right? Because everybody needs to be able to do this. So thank you again.
Thanks so much. If we don't have any more questions on the tracking tool, we're going to move. Any more questions? We do have some comments that we'll capture. Yes. And then we're going to move to Miss Margaret. You want to start us off on the break?
Okay.
Conference.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. First thing I'm gonna say, thanks everybody who showed up. And here's a list of the people who was there involved in the interest port conference. Bill, Alexis, Fern, Averdia, David, who is David, who is one of our interns who's been working with us. And then we also have Karan, and then Nicole, the staff from Earth Justice, David Woolley and his student, Lily from Bay Area Air Quality, and two other staff people. Then we had Kalia and Alicia. Kalia from the city of Oakland, and Alicia from now with the Bay Area Air Quality. Did I miss anybody who was there? Did I miss anybody who was there? We were well represented. as West Oakland at this event. And that my 2 cents is that they did not have a structure or framing or dialogue how to engage community. They did not have. Most of the work was about studies that they did totally in isolation without the community and being involved. But there was studies that also did give information how they was trying to find out some information. And we as West Oakland really outnumbered those. There was no other community. There was no other community at the table who attended this. So we were well represented. So can I ask Alverdia or Nicole, Bill, do y'all have something to add to this? Nicole?
I'm
Bill?
here. Sure. It was an interesting conference for sure. Lots and lots of presentations. They seemed toward, I only attended the first day. I couldn't come back for the second day. I was interested in some of the items that were on the second day, but couldn't quite make it. But the first day sounded like they had a little bit of time to be able to take some questions and some comments, and then they started rushing through the rest of it. Different topics. Some of it seemed like they didn't really think through it. So for example, I'll give you an example. For when Sutter came, Sutter County was doing their study about trucks. They concentrated on truck parking, truck stops, and they were trying to reduce the amount of flow of trucks into those truck stops, which seems to be counter to what we're trying to do here. You want those truck stops to be a magnet and attract the trucks away from residential, and do the planning of having residential not be next to truck stops. And they seem to be doing the reverse here. They're like, okay, we're going to reduce the amount of trucks that flow into truck stops to get the services and plug in or do whatever they need to do. That was one thing that I noticed and I commented on. The other thing too is that I noticed is everybody was saying there's lots and lots of grants from the EPA, from the DOT, but nobody's putting numbers to zero emission trucks. Zeroing in on what is actually happening, the rules that we have in California, and what the actual cost of these trucks are. So no matter how much you say you're going to give 120,000 toward the zero emission truck, it's not enough with the price of those trucks being so high. I was hoping that somebody would talk about some of the exemptions that we've been going for, the sales tax exemption in California and FET tax, to take it off of the zero emission trucks so we can reduce the cost of those trucks. None of that. So I just wish that whenever somebody's presenting, they give the whole picture rather than say we have money. Go to our website. I don't think they realize how hard it is to get these grants and the paperwork that you have to go through and navigate through. If you're going to give grants and you're trying to accomplish a mission, that you should come out to the people that you're targeting rather than be at this conference and just do some PR. I did also notice the port had some misinformation about the dwell time. They were talking about how they're jammed up. And they said a lot of the customers are not picking up their cargo. That's why there's a lot of dwell time. So their solution is to add more fees to get them to move faster. But they failed to say that half of the containers are empty, that the steamship lines are causing this jam up at the ports by not evacuating their empties. So OICT, our biggest terminal here in Oakland, has not been receiving MSC containers and one high containers for the last 2 weeks. So if you look around the neighborhood everywhere, you're going to see a lot of containers everywhere. Then we can't pick up new containers because there's no chassis. And so, you know, Danny should have known better. He should know the pulse of the port, but obviously he doesn't, or he misled people by saying it's the importers that are not picking up their cargo, when half of the containers that are jamming up SSA, OICT are empties, and the steamship lines need to evacuate them. But anyway, that's what I got out of it. I wish I could have gone for the second day, but it was overall, it was very good to see a different perspective.
Alverdia and then Alexis, y'all have anything add what you like, dislike, we did better for this conference? Alverdia?
We just need to get you off mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we were put off starting the conference by about 45 minutes, waiting for the first speaker. Now, to me, I felt like they should have taken the speakers that were there and present and ready to go, do that until that speaker came, and then work them in. Because what they did is they penalized us. They cut our time down, and as David said, they were pushing us through and all of that. They were rushing us, but we had time to sit around and wait for the first speaker to show up. And I didn't think they were taking our time into consideration. So I just have that to say about that. Otherwise, it seemed to go according to plan, but it did make a difference, you know, because it cut down on every break we had, everything, and just pushing. And it was a very packed agenda. I wish there were maybe an extra day, because it was a lot of information. And I'm a novice at this, so I grasp what I can. I'm going to go ahead and start with Danny. He was the person we were waiting for. So at the port, he was talking about the growth and how the port intends to grow, and deal and manage the substations and zero emissions target. And he says for us to revert to the budget about the infrastructure. And they were going to be upgrading the sewer lines, substations, to reach that zero emissions. Also, he was stating that these microgrids that they're working on to build to make things compatible, I guess the sensors or whatever, no, not the sensors, I'm sorry. I think it's the trucks. I'm not sure. Please help me out, because they was talking about building and making it compatible for solar and battery on the microgrids. And they talked about storing and distribution of power to the plug-in. So I think it had to do with the trucks plugging in. So if anybody can understand what I'm talking about, because I'm still shaky on it, but I did ask him what the timeline was on building up and building out these substations and making it compatible. He said it's going to take about 10 years, and I asked him about the impact on our community. And it was kind of wishy-washy to me, his response. He kind of
no, I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, he kind of glossed over it to me. You know, it's like, well, you know, we're working on it and we're having community engagement. It's like, oh, okay. So I guess that's something that's on the plan to interact with the community as they're doing this. And
I'll call you back in the meeting.
okay, and also I asked him about when they are doing the build out for the substations and stuff, are they considering the sea rise level because it's impacting the port now? And so he says, yes, they are have that in the plan, and they're building out around the sea level rise. And what else he said? He said the exports have been down, the ships coming in has been decreased, and most of the ships are going to LA. So I don't know how that's gonna impact their future growth if ships are not coming in. It's kind of opposing what he's saying. You're building now to grow a port, but everybody's going to LA and the exports are not coming here. And I guess that's another conversation. But he said that they're planning on building 5 to 10 substations to build out for flexibility. And I also asked him, are they working towards the hybrid model, you know, making the solar and a battery compatible so that when they plug in, they'll be able to do that until everybody gets to the zero emission. And he actually told me they are testing right now for that. So I thanked him for that information. And that was pretty much it. Yeah, about the sea rise and the hybrid. Also, they would talked about a lot about data and the EPA port data and the demographic, geospatial data. And I was a little confused because I don't know much about it. So it kind of was like over my head, but I did listen. I made a couple of notes, and as I read it, the only thing that really made sense to me is when they were talking about the, of course, the demographics and the geospatial data for the ethnic groups, age, and socioeconomic status and racial. So, and when they spoke of the disymmetric data, they said they used the 30 milligram, the 30, I'm gonna put like the 30 megapixels, okay? And that's what I wrote. So I'm hoping that that's it. And they said that with the health risk factors, they have sensitive receptors to, I can't even read my own writing. So I'm gonna, don't laugh.
I'm right there with you. I don't know what disymmetric is. So, you know, hey.
Very
Okay.
complicated. I appreciate you, Verdi. I
Yes.
appreciate you getting so much detail. There's a lot of work we should do to help all of us understand what these words mean.
Can
Okay.
I get Alexis to give a few
Alexis.
Oh, wait,
sentences?
I got one more thing I'd like to get in, please.
Mhm.
And it was about the emissions from the ships that they talked about, and which I didn't know, like Sam Novice is new, but what they did say, and it kind of surprised me about the emissions, that when the ships slow down, they have higher emissions of the pollutants and particulate matters. And so with them idling, and when they're idle, that means they're closer in. So we're going to get more of the not so good air quality, so to speak. So they are looking to try to mitigate these things. And so hopefully they can, and we can, and the community engagement ensues. So thank you so much for allowing me to share the bit that I did get.
Thank you. Alexis, can you give a few sentences?
Sure. I mean, I think for people who weren't able to attend the conference, one thing to keep in mind is that this, even though it was held right in Oakland, most of the presentations were not particular to Oakland. It is a conference that had people from Washington, D.C., so coming from the national level at the EPA, people who were coming at the state level, and then also people at the local level, right? And so the majority of the presentations were not focused on Oakland, but the ones that were focused.
Afghanistan as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was a PhD student who, you know, had recorded stuff and presented via video on Afghanistan. So it was really, really global in terms of the focus. But yeah, for the parts that were specific to Oakland, and unfortunately there was one presenter we're going to get the slides from, who was going to talk about the 7th Street grade separation project. Didn't get to present, but we'll get those slides. But the ones that did get to present, and I think Alverio did a pretty good job of explaining this, but it seems like the port actually has gotten a ton of grants, a ton of money to do certain mitigation strategies. Mostly it seems like they're testing out equipment. One thing I think I heard a lot during it was like, we're testing this equipment, but we're not necessarily like confident about the technology, which was a little concerning. So, you know, everything from electric trucks, you know, they call them like electric picks, I think. Does anyone know the terminology for that? Sorry, I forget.
Electric top pick is like a thing that grabs the container from the top.
Yes, yes.
Moves it around like a forklift. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they it seems like they got a lot of grants, but it's different, and they're testing things, but it's different than like a full commitment to using the technology and expanding it in the long term. At least that's the sense I got. And then the other thing I'll say, which I thought was really interesting, and maybe this is like what everybody else here really already knows, but the Port of Oakland has 4 different income streams. So it's like the seaport, the airport. They own most of Jack London Square, so they get rental income from that. And then they also are considered a utility, and so they're producing energy. And so those are their 4 sources of income, which I had no idea that was all connected. You know, so anyway, that's kind of my takeaway. There were a lot of presentations though, and I'm sure we can share the slides with anyone who's interested. So
My request is everybody who attended, take time to write a short briefing so we could collect them as part of our archives. Because I do know the people from who was the waste management group who did this, air waste management group who did this, just sent out a monkey survey to everybody. But I would like to also have everybody's testimony, what they got of it, what they didn't think out, if they didn't get out of it, and what should be future engagements around community understanding what they're trying to do. So if people could send me that, so I could compile it and then eventually find somebody to synthesize it into a document. I would appreciate that.
I also think there's a great opportunity here for us as the co-leads helping to, you know, present content for the steering committee. If there are things in there that you'd like to know more about, then we can create some, you know, workshop materials or educational materials and present them. The port is a complicated thing, and you guys learned a heck of a lot in a day or two. There is a lot of info we could help you with. We could do a presentation on microgrids if that's interesting to people. We could do a presentation on the port's utility if that's interesting to people. On the port's overall, you know, they have a master electric plan they're trying to develop. We could ask them to present on that. So a lot of what you heard maybe raises questions you'd like to know more about, and that would be great for our future meetings, our future steering committee meetings, right? Because the port is such a big piece of our air plan.
All those who turned up and showed up. We had a good turnout. Thank you. Thank everybody.
Very nice. I was really happy to see the opportunity for all of y'all to go to that meeting.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And there's some additional comments in the chat there about. So if there are no more comments on the conference, we'll move forward. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And also, for those who joined us a little later, please sign in.
Oh, sorry, Randolph. I forgot to do some salutations. I forgot to thank the Bay Area Quality for getting the tickets, and also the Port of Oakland supporting tickets for others from West Oakland and the AB 617 steering committee to participate. I forgot to make that thank you.
Great. Okay, so the sign-in sheet for today is in for those who came. So please make sure that you sign in. And then we're going to move to the community engagement plan. So the co-leads have a subgroup, a working group that have been working on a community engagement plan for the last while, maybe a couple of months or so. And so we're going to share some of that right now. Let's see here. We are going to start. Typically, it's always a challenge to kind of edit anything by committee, but it's not too large a group. And so we thought it would be easier to do it in the full group than to do breakouts. And so we're just going to kind of go through. We're going to go through the plan, and then we're going to come back and I'll point out particular sections where we kind of need your input. So the draft is in the chat, and so that's a PDF, so you can follow along. And again, so of the work group led by Miss Margaret, myself, Joshua, Anna, and Nicole, we've been working on it similar to what we did with some of the other plans, like when we were in realignment, you know, kind of coming up with these different documents, coming up with a definition of what we're trying to do, coming up with goals and objectives, and then breaking that thing down so we can have, you know, kind of very bite-sized bits and pieces. And so you'll see what we're doing there. Ultimately, we're going to want to say less. We're going to want to be very, very clear in terms of what it is that we're doing in terms of our community engagement, and it'll state it in the document. But what we're trying to do is have a very clear document that internally we as co-leads can use to kind of direct the community engagement and outreach efforts. We can also, the steering committee can also use this in their work as they are sharing the information and communicating about the work of the WOCAP. And then it works as a standalone doc also. And so some is specific around goals, objectives, some is like methods of community engagement. And then we've also got some tools in there. This is really going to be a living document. And so it's not going to be done when it's done. For instance, we have a section with references, resources, and reports. Of course, there's always new information coming out, and so we'll be able to kind of share that and add that. And again, now that we have, you know, kind of a WOAP website 2.0, that will be where you go to get all of this information. And really what we're trying to do is create a compelling narrative. And so we don't want it just to be static and stale information. We really want to be able to, and actually it says it in here. And as Miss Margaret and I were talking one day, we need to West Oaklandize it, right? Because there are, you'll see other community engagement plans, which may be kind of generic, and this is what you do to reach the community. but we really think that there's something special about West Oakland and the residents of West Oakland. And so we want to West Oaklandize it. That's in general, and then particularly in sections like equity. So as we come up with an equity statement, you know, we really want to make sure that it specifically is tailored to and speaks for the West Oakland community. Um, so, um, and again, Miss Margaret is all things community engagement begin and end with Miss Margaret. And so I'm going to go through the whole document, and then you'll see that some of it is in red. So we're going to come back in some slides. So general, this is about WOCAP. It's about the environmental justice principles. Then about this community engagement plan, it's about community knowledge, building receptacle channels of communication, investing in partnerships, fostering community leadership, and ensuring ownership of the environmental governance process. So there's room to kind of add and edit a lot of this stuff, but you'll see where the most important pieces are. We've got our co-leads. I was just amazed to see, just being out at the port, just how long those lines of idling trucks were. Just how long they were, and then they just wrapped around and around. So this is one of the sections we're going to get back to. Just really why it matters, right? And this is where we're trying to come up with a story, a narrative, you know, really from West Oakland residents as to why this work matters, right? As Ms. Margaret and the group were talking, you know, we started with race being a factor in determining health outcomes. And it's really at the heart of the environmental justice movement. Another piece, which I'm going to have Ms. Margaret speak on, is just how we incorporate the public health message into this community engagement plan. Can you speak on that, Ms. Margaret?
Well, one of the things that I have learned over the years being part of this is that if we don't have the data or the research, they dismiss us. They don't want to hear us being emotional, but we've got to continue to have that research and data and be able to translate it so everybody has the ability to speak on it. That's one of the few things, that's one of the number one things that we have to continuously reinforce in community engagement. How we continuously transforming and being transparent and accountable to make sure the community really has an orientation education to be able to speak on all these issues or concerns when it comes down to these particular things. And that's my hope for this community engagement, that we continuously have the materials, documentation, lessons learned, case studies that give folks that ability when they get in front of the officials or who has what authority, they can do testimony and give how important this is, not just also personally, but from a technical piece.
Yeah, and specifically, and you'll see there's like a sampling of data graphics. There's any number of data graphics that we can include, and we will have a repository of those. We got some great, we got a great start between Anna, got some stuff from from Alameda County Public Health. Zwin sent me some great stuff. The HEAC, the Health Equity Advisory Committee, in some of their reports. And so we'll have a repository of those. And so as people need to get information to make the case and to build the narrative, those will be in one place. But Ms. Margaret, I'm just going to go back to, you wanted to kind of frame this in public health. Can you just say?
And also, yes, because when just an example, the Port of Oakland never come from the perspective of public health and anything that they do so far. So we still have to, how do we keep challenging that business model that they to be more including of public health?
Okay, great.
And then also, CARB, sorry, CARB, I don't see y'all making them have a different mindset when all the regulations, statutories, ordinances to be supportive of these ports, refineries, logistics centers, agriculture, work from the place of public health.
Mhm.
So until we have that entity who has a lot of authority, or the US EPA who has somewhat authority of these other entities to work from a place of public health, we're gonna have this escaping of not talking about public health.
Mhm. So
Even though people inside those institutions personally may have somebody with asthma who died of cancer, who has had cardiovascular disease, but it's not an intentionality from them to work from that space. And that's one of the big gaps that we cannot go to these next level, include no more elements of public health into these business plans to reduce emissions. Because they found everywhere they can not to be including of public health.
yeah. So what we'll have with this document is a place that has the data and the graphics, but also this narrative, so we can, so those who need to can kind of carry that message as Ms. Margaret does. A lot of this is really a capacity building or a leadership development tool. That's what we're doing here. So everybody on the screen, you know, kind of can carry the message. And so that's kind of what this, and we'll also be doing recruiting. And so part of this is going to be used for orientation as additional steering committee members come on, additional implementation projects get created, and we have these different orientations. We want to have a document that kind of speaks for WOCAP. And that red box, I'm gonna fancy that up a little bit, but that's Brian's formula that he came up with. We thought that was pretty smart. Exposure plus vulnerability equals risk, right? And what is risk? It's all these things. Ultimately, it's shortened life expectancy, but it's these hosts of chronic diseases. So all of those will be there, and you'll be able to speak about the concentrations, the hyperlocal differences, the redlining, and all the rest of that good stuff. So the purpose again, and Jess?
Sorry, I was curious if if you're going to also be building out sort of plans for how we'll, like, I think it sounds to me like this is like in some ways like a resource kit for folks when doing engagement and outreach around like like you were saying, recruiting and community informing and educating community members. I'm curious if there's, and I see some stuff around like tactical outreach, and I'm wondering sort of how much of the focus is around informational tools versus say like outreach strategy and like how we're
Gotcha.
gonna,
Yes.
you know.
So that will come, and I'll pull up a document and later. It's a table that we have for different initiatives. And so that's going to be a start.
Fantastic.
And
Thanks.
again, just like, really just like we talked about the tracking tool, we wanted that high level overview, but for those who needed more and more information, click, get a little bit more information, click again, get a little bit more information. And so ultimately what we're trying to do is use this tool, one, for recruitment, not only for steering committee members, but also implementation project members. It's general outreach and education, and then there's going to be specific project-based communications that we need to do. Here's just an engagement framework, right? Centered around equity, neighborhood benefits, resident leadership. We want to improve health and reduce exposure and emissions. And then ultimately, there's a capacity building component to this. We want to increase resources and political capital, which you can do when you are facile with the narrative. Our target audiences are not only specifically West Oakland residents, West Oakland businesses, but also community-based organizations, agencies, and the like. Our youth are split up into high school students, and we've got some great kind of leads on really motivated young people who are working in either leadership or environmental justice space. And then youth, you know, like at least for most of the people, is anybody, you know, anybody under 30. I know that's youth for me.
You wanna add that we have been asked by the Rose Foundation. Was it raising? What's the name of the youth group, Brian?
Youth Against the Apocalypse.
And no, the other group at Rose Foundation.
Oh,
New Voices Are Rising.
Yeah, New Rising. Yeah,
gotcha.
They want to come back and be engaged.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of good leads on, you know, what we think will be really good prospects for steering committee members. And so we'll be getting back to this also. What does success look like? There's some big goals, right, that are just stated in the plan. By 2025 and by 2030, impacted zones are as clean as either the average or the cleanest residential neighborhood. But there is also other visions. And so we want to go back and just ask from you, like, in a perfect world, if we were, you know, wildly successful, what would success look like for you? So we're going to come back to that. There's a timeline. There's a lot that's been done since, you know, WOCAP and BACMed, you know, entered this partnership, right? Since 2018, there have just been some incredible milestones along the way. And so we wanted a way to kind of visualize that. Here again is the equity agenda. So with equity at the center of all of our work, you know, we really want to, from the West Oakland perspective, we want to hear from you, like a West Oaklandized version of what equity is. We can certainly use a dictionary version, or we can Google what is equity. But we also want to hear from.
Okay, but also, Randolph, we also wanted to add to that part about equity is having to be able to translate what has happened in West Oakland. And one of the things that have given me support to do that is when Fern and Maria, and I can't think the other young lady from Puerto Rico came to us and started talking to us about proximity, land use, enforcement, zoning, because we didn't never connect that to environment and being hyperlocal. We never connected that to as part of the part of the testimony of being able to go beyond just being emotional, but able to use those terms as part of your testimony. So they gave us another set of tools to democratize any evidence and facts that we have by giving us another set of language to use when we went before those who have that authority.
Gotcha. So those are going to be your prompts when we come back to this slide around equity. Those will
Yes.
be your prompts.
Right. Because we never had that. We never had that those definitions that was more including around the issue of public health until we did those different projects in the past with Google Card, Dr. Acti, Barry Air Quality, and Environmental Defense Fund really uplifted us another level of being able to communicate those things. We never had that before.
Gotcha. Awesome. So moving forward, we went through realignment, created the implementation projects and teams. That gives an overview of that. Here's another piece: potential barriers and solutions. So as people are doing outreach, engagement, and kind of sharing the information, there are typically potential inclusivity barriers, and specifically with what is generally called hard to reach populations. And so we have to figure out whether it's a matter of the community members' resources and capacity.
No, I want to see my new baby.
It could be like, we want to see your new baby too. It could be an accessibility issue.
That's my
It
new
could be
baby.
a cultural.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna mute you for just a moment. An accessibility issue, a cultural and racial diversity issue, or disparate environmental factors that was around the hyperlocal. So there are these barriers that we want to preemptively identify and solve for, right? So when they come up, it's not something that we don't have a plan for. So if it's accessibility, it might be how we reach people and that sort of thing. And so if we can think of additional potential barriers and solutions, and then that's what we'll be asking for there. This is a more typical community outreach process and methods: inform, consult, and involve, collaborate, and empower. Again, there's always a leadership development, a community and resident leadership development component of this. This is the outreach tool. So now that we have these individual implementation projects and teams, as we begin to kind of reach out and share information about these projects, that's not the right one. Oh, there it is. So this is another one that we're going to have. So this could be whatever it is, whatever you're doing. If it's a project, a campaign, or initiative, that would go there. And there are going to be different methods by which you do community engagement. There are different outreach tactics and channels for digital, meeting in person. We will have town halls at some point. We had talked about the concept of these leadership academies and orientations. Like, so as people are coming in, whether they be implementation team members, steering committee members, general public projects, we'll have particular orientations for them: tabling, community events. There's print media, word of mouth, video, advertising. So every project is not going to warrant all of these things. But if you look at your individual projects and the resources available to you at that time, you can kind of chart out, what it is that you can do to get the information out. Who's responsible? What's the timeline? What are your goals? And then what kind of resources that you need to get that done, because then that's when you can come back and ask for different resources. And so this is just to be used as a tool, and you can edit it. If there's additional information, you can provide input on that, or you can use it how you would like. So that's the outreach tool. We've got this references report, references, reports, and resources. And this is just some of it more generalized information. So it's, kind of national and international stuff, but a lot of it is, specific to West Oakland. We've got, and we're just looking for more data that is specific to, and again, this came from, just an internal call internally to the team, and then some of the steering committee members to provide information on resources that they thought would be useful. And again, these will be on the WOCAP website. And then there's a glossary of terms. So a lot of times we don't like to use jargon or acronyms or that sort of thing, and we want to have a place for people to go. And again, this list is going to grow. And it also, the goal is really to say less. So we just want to be very, very clear. And if we can get some of these down, again, this equity is in red because we're going to be coming back to it. So that's the, that is the overview. Do we have any questions? Miss Margaret, do you have anything else you want to share? I'm going to unmute you. Miss Margaret, do you have anything that you want to share before we go back to the slides? Okay. Does anybody else have anything that they want to share? Just initial feedback?
I would just say that I'm really, really excited. And as I look at the work that Common Vision is trying to do in West Oakland, I'm still not totally sure where we fit in that plan, but boy, do I see a lot of potential for dovetailing all of these things together and using these tools and these resources to inform the events that we're throwing in the school gardens and that kind of thing.
Great. Others?
I just think it's really impressive. Great work.
Oh, thank you. Team, you take your victory lap now. It was a team effort. So, okay, just going back, and we're gonna popcorn this thing. You can raise your hand, just speak it out. We're gonna capture it, but we just really want to get as much information as we can. So, first of all, why does it even matter? Why does this work matter? Why does the work that we are all gathered here to do, why does it matter? Go.
Do you want us to speak up on
Yep,
it or?
please.
Oh,
We're recording and we're transcribing, and to the best of our ability, we're going to kind of capture this, because again, we want this document to reflect you, right? Not us, but you as West Oakland residents, businesses, and stakeholders. We want it to represent you. So why does this, Sal Verdia, why does this work matter to you?
the environmental justice issues matters to me because we're studying the area that I reside in, and it's personal to me. And when you speak of having people that you know or family dying from environmental type issues, such as asthmatics dying, young people dying from asthma, older people. We have natural things that go on in our bodies, and we try to mitigate it and stay as healthy as possible. But it just seems like the environment for me, from when I was a kid, before they went to the moon, I was in the South. I lived in Memphis. I was born in Memphis. And I remember the air was so clean. Everything was fresh. We didn't have so many cars on the street. People had cars, but not like it is now. And to bring it back to point, when we first started the pandemic and everyone stayed home, how many of you remember when that ocean out there turned blue?
Mhm.
How many people
Right.
remember that?
Right.
That is the biggest sign for us to care. It was shown to us. And we need to take it to heart and not just keep going about your way and being unconcerned, because at some point it's going to impact you. You know, it may impact people like me because I'm closer to a lot of these things. The toxicity in the grounds, McClymonds with the water coming up and the environmental things that are happening in the neighborhood. My daughter went to McClymonds. So when these things were happening, she was there. Some of the things that happens within other communities where you have all of these buildings going up, nobody mitigates it. I'm not going to say nobody. It appears that the mitigation is not a concern to anybody that's building, and it's about the money. And I think life and health is above money for me. And I would like to make sure that something is being done to mitigate it, and oversight created to follow through, and not just people come and dump their toxic waste and pack it up and leave. And then we're left to deal with the particles and particulate matter, mostly particles that gets into the soil and in our air. We're breathing this stuff because we're breathing these particulate matter.
Yeah.
You know, those things are having an impact on you whether you know it or not. So that's why it's important to me.
So I'm hearing you're tired of people dying, and the earth will heal itself if you let it. Others?
If we allow it to.
Yes. Others?
Yes. Thank you.
Why does this, thank you, Albertia. Others, why does this work matter? And these are like, and I think we want more personal accounts of why. That's why we're not, kind of taking dictionary descriptions of this work. That's why we're asking the question. Anybody else? If you have any thoughts, you can certainly weigh in. Jimmy?
Yeah, Albertia said a lot of that really well. I think just the livability of our own community is why this matters. The health side of it, just knowing that you can go outside, and if it's rush hour, that maybe you shouldn't be outside, just not having those all those things running through your head on decisions that a lot of other communities don't have when they're going about their day. So it's ultimately the health of the West Oakland community and the future of the West Oakland community is why this is so important, and trying to right wrongs. There's been a lot of damage done to this community, and it's well overdue to continue to make progress on those wrongs.
Awesome. Why, what does success look like? If you were 100% successful, we got through the 89 strategies, it's done. What is, aside from having gotten through 89 strategies, what does success look and feel like? Anyone? All right, Colin.
I think it would look like all of us working together, like all the agencies involved, all of you all at WOCAP and WOAP, working more collaboratively, like more towards like the empower end of the spectrum of engagement. And then just when it comes down to like just to be blunt, like cleaner air. Like if we look at that metric, like I think that we can know that we're successful when we've cleaned our air, and then we have all the things that result from that, like our people being healthy, especially our most vulnerable residents in West Oakland.
Awesome. Alexis?
I think the most important thing is the results. So the disparities that currently exist have to go to zero, and they have to go to zero in what I mean in the positive direction. It doesn't mean everybody else who has clean air now gets worse. It means everyone has great breathable air, and that what we're seeing with like 2 times the cancer rate and just these horrible statistics, that goes away. So yeah, getting like equity in health outcomes is probably number 1. And then I think the second thing is that right now we're being reactive, right? Damage has been done. We're trying to make it better. We're trying to, again, correct past wrongs, but success, I think, going forward would mean that these considerations are always part of the planning process. So we never get into, a problem area again, that basically, everyone thinks about involving a community in these discussions from the beginning. And so bad stuff doesn't get built.
Thank you. Brian?
Thanks. As far as what success looks like, from the standpoint of our air plan, of course, there are numerical targets in there that we would like to achieve. And those are relative to, measurable concentrations in our air and the elimination or reduction of the sources of those pollutants. And I think to me, that's the first step. It's a little like our tracking project. It's like, first we need to get to some quantitative measurements that we can look at, and then we can ask ourselves other quantitative numbers like, is health improving because we've significantly cut these local air concentration, these air pollution. Ultimately, the goal is to improve the quality of life and health for the residents. And I think we tried to lay out, and as we all worked on the plan, we tried to lay out a measurable approach to that. Like much of our work in West Oakland, it's difficult because we're asking hard questions. And, certainly the health piece of it is difficult to measure, and we hope to do more of that. But I would say that achieving those targets is the first step, and then being able to relate that to improvements in community and individual health, because then that opens the door to, well, if we didn't improve health as much as we wanted, then what do we do next? It opens the door to the next action, the next plan, right? There is no end to this work as such. It's like, we did this, we planned this, we tried this, we did that, we achieved these. Now, what is the new condition? Mm-hmm. And that's the nature of all this work, right?
And before we, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's fine.
Oh, and before we go to Marjane, and before we get off of this, I'm just going to add it. So this goes to your question, Marjane. Like, how do you feel? How do you feel when you've reached that level of success?
Are you asking me?
Sure.
Yeah. So I actually think, success means every child growing up in West Oakland has the same opportunities than children growing up, 10, 15 miles away, who breathe better air. They have more access to green space, suffer less heat waves, and have a lot better opportunities. And their mothers were not pregnant, during suffering with terrible air pollution and being exposed to other toxicants, and they didn't grow up in homes that were not weathered. So I think that would be success. That's equity. So I think it would be exhilarating if we ever get there. But there's a lot of work to be done. I don't think it's just, I mean, I know we're focused on air, but you look at air, there are a lot of other things that goes along with it.
Mhm. Thank you. And Brian? Oh, no. Oh, okay. Okay, great. And so you brought up equity, and when Joshua and I were looking at this picture, a lot of them, I was out there either at Middle Harbor or at the other part, and the air was just looking pretty thick out there. That was, and I wish I could say that was Photoshop. And you mentioned equity, and so again, we want to West Oaklandize the definition. We know that there's a difference between equity and equality. We want to put some historical context to it. We want to make it specific to our target populations, both, you know, the folks on this screen and those others, the youth and that sort of thing, and in terms of action items to get there. So does anybody have any thoughts on equity? Bill?
I actually just wanted to weigh in on this. I think we've had pretty good success with the community reaching out, not only to the residential community, but also to the business community, the truck drivers, the business owners on this side of the freeway, where we're being educated about air quality. We're busy trying to earn a living. We're starting the dialogue back and forth. A lot of our truck drivers that work the port live in Oakland. A lot live in West Oakland. And so it is our community, business and residential, and we should have the dialogue. And I think West Oakland EIP has been very successful in reaching out and educating the local business community about these things. It's not something that we attend in a business class. We're trying to constantly chase our tail and trying to earn a living. But this is a very important thing for all of us. And I think us also educating the community on what we do and what challenges we have has helped us, where we co-lobby for things to be right. And that can fit into equity, because most of the truck drivers here at the port, 90% are independent contractors, and most are minorities. You know, it's so that's a big win, but it's also, we need to continue that work. And I appreciate West Oakland IP and keep pushing.
That is a very important point to as a part of our narrative. Any others? And we're going to go to kind of barriers and solutions. And I don't mean to pick on the folks in the new housing with the rovers, but it was just interesting. You know, as you go in, you see, you know, one part of the neighborhood and then go to the next part of the neighborhood. And that was really just in terms of the barriers and solutions. You know, kind of sometimes we're hearing, you know, it's a situation where the new residents are really at odds with the historical populations because kind of the resources and that sort of thing. So I think that that's one of the things that we have to account for as we're doing the outreach. But there's the resource issue, there's the accessibility issue, transportation, language, technology, institutional physical barriers, disabilities, that sort of thing, cultural and racial diversity, disparate environmental factors. Can we think of any other barriers to outreaching to underserved or hard to reach populations?
access to healthcare.
And is that going in? Is that going in community members' resources or accessibility?
Both, I think. Both. Because we have really diverse demographics in West Oakland.
Sure.
And you have a lot of people, well, I'm not gonna say, there are some people that don't have command or know how to read English. And so they live within our community. They breathe the same air that we do, and some of the same issues that we may have impacting us, I'm pretty sure they're impacting them as well. So, you know, just bridging and making sure that we can get information in different languages, or getting interpreters to come in and help support that and disseminating the information to people of different language and ethnicities. But also even in the community of Black people, like the mortality rate for infants, you know, these mothers are losing their babies. I can't remember the statistics because I did read an article on it actually earlier this year. So that's not something that's gone by the wayside. Mothers are still losing their babies at birth because they did not necessarily have the best of prenatal care, or even being determined to even be pregnant until much later along, where they should have been getting those vitamins and stuff at the onset of pregnancy. So I think it belongs in both places.
Yeah. And what I'm also hearing from you, and I see you, Wanda, is not just getting information to different populations in their language, but also there's an opportunity for cross-pollination, kind of like a poor people's campaign, right? White or Black, they were still poor, right? And that was the commonality. It seems like that there's an opportunity there as well. Wanda?
Yeah, to dovetail also onto what Ms. Alverdia was saying, I've spent the last couple of weeks close up on the ground in the schools. And there's a whole bunch of our people who just don't have, if we call it mental health, if we call it intellectual capacity, just extreme social disconnections. I'm not sure what kind of labels to put on it, but there's a whole lot of folks that, and the reading and the writing and all of that stuff is up in there, but reaching out to the folks who are halfway on the streets, reaching out to, I mean, some of these parents, they were like just going off in the middle of the street, and there wasn't anything anybody could do to help them come to terms with what they were upset about, and they had no ability to functionally engage in support in doing that, and yet they're part of our community.
Gotcha. Thank you. All great information, and again, we want it from a very, you know, kind of a very personal perspective. So the only thing else, and I'm just gonna, this is just a request. If you see or know of any resources, reports, and references that you can share with us that are that would be of value to communicate or to kind of hold in this repository on the website, please send those. And any other comments that you have as well on community engagement. And we'll be talking about it more as we finish this up. So thank you all. And with that, we're going to move to Miss Margaret and Gavin, I believe. Oh, and Maria. Yes. We've got an update on the West Oakland link.
Okay. Let me start with that the West Oakland Link has never been a strategy of ours, of the West Oakland Community Action Plan. But I felt it was important to stretch the envelope to talk about this project based on the fact that, based on the information that we have gotten from the Alchema Google card, Earth card, that this is a high polluting spot for this destination project for a trail project. It was a trail project. So, you know, bikeable, walkable, mobility thing that I never found on. I have never been engaged on, but some people like these things, and that they want to be able to have walkable, bikeable mobility to take that trail along the highway road on the other side of the Bay Bridge all the way to Treasure Island. And it's called, there's the West Oakland Link, and then there's a Skyway project. So this came to us as West Oakland Environment Indicators 3 or 4 years ago. And this year it resurged again. And as it resurged, with us having the information about hyperlocal, block by block, proximity, risk, and exposure, we wanted to add that have that as an additive for remediation. And it took a minute for the thanking from the staff of who's been having the authority, and the agency is the Bay Area Toll Association, who is paying or collecting the funding to do this West Oakland Link. And I felt as though I took it on myself to really engage to talk about this thing of risk and exposure. Also, us having the Health Equity Advisory Committee also gave me another level of really explaining about the health and risk issues. And so we had a workshop last night. We had a community meeting last night. And I would like for Maria and Gavin to tell us how about the turnout, and Brian, Alexis was there, Nicole was there, but we didn't have that many community people. But I think a lot of the stuff that through the information from the slide deck about exposure and risk has made the project come to a place where it's that remediation is on the horizon. So Maria and Gavin, which one of y'all want to speak first?
I can let Maria go unless Maria, you want me to go.
You can go ahead, Gavin. I don't know if it would be useful to just start with a little more about the information you provided last night about the project.
Yeah, so
the meeting, okay, two things. Sorry to interrupt, Gavin. Also, there was a meeting today, so and the meeting last night. So go for it.
Yeah, so the other thing we were trying to present kind of from the agency perspective, so the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Bay Area Toll Authority, we were presenting on some of the different new methods that are being proposed for crossing the corridor between San Francisco and the East Bay and Oakland in particular. And so, you know, we presented on that, and but I think really where the meat of it came was when we had our discussion and we had the presentation on the air pollution, because there was actually a lot of agency representatives, so a lot of people from different agencies and our agency that were there. And I think the takeaway kind of I heard today from everyone was it was really kind of eye-opening to get this information. And because I think as a transportation organization, when we think of air pollution, we are thinking about, can we do something to reduce air pollution from transportation? But we never are thinking about the perspective that WOCAP and Miss Margaret have brought to us, which is that exposure to the users of transportation. And this is kind of a paradigm shift that I think was really appreciated, and something that we are going to really take to heart and continue to work with WOCAP to make sure that our project actually addresses this part of the problem, and not just reducing the air pollution from transportation. But it was I got a lot of really positive feedback from all the agency staff. So I feel like it was great to have the community involvement in the conversation. It was also a real learning experience for the agency itself.
Maria?
Sure, yeah. So Kelsey Meisenhelder and I both attended, sort of presenting as members of the Health Equity Advisory Committee, and Marjane Mooney was also involved in looking into the literature, first just sort of presenting some general information about traffic-related air pollution and the health impacts of traffic-related air pollution, as well as some of the context from the Owning Our Air report about health inequity in West Oakland and the vulnerability of West Oakland residents to air pollution. And then sharing some data from the publicly available new mobile data that from the ACLMA platform on the PM and NO2 concentrations that were measured along the West Grand area where the link is proposed, and showing that pollution there is definitely higher than some of the lower traffic areas of West Oakland, and suggesting that the short and long-term health impacts of air pollution exposure to users of the proposed link could be reduced if there were some mitigation approaches taken. So we discussed a little bit of what we'd seen in the literature on potential mitigation strategies. One of them being trying to have trail users, where possible, use the trail outside of peak hours, potential barriers, either vegetative barriers or solid, to block some of the pollution exposure. And we just sort of had some general discussion about how these agencies and the WOCAP steering committee can continue to coordinate as the project proceeds, to try to make sure that benefits of the project to West Oakland residents and West Oakland residents' health are being centered and maximized. So it was a good discussion. I think there were a lot of really important perspectives shared by the West Oakland residents who attended the meeting, and openness from the agency staff to sort of really thinking about this seriously.
Alexis, who as a community member, you were there. Do you have anything you want to add to this conversation?
I mean, I think that this was probably the first meeting I've attended specifically on the link. I've actually seen it at like a Prescott Neighborhood Council meeting as well, where there was just a lot of listening, a lot of question asking of the community, and a lot of listening. And I really appreciate that you asked us, had that survey that you asked us. I love the format, so thank you.
Brian, Nicole, did I miss anybody who's not there? Because this event, to be have more clarification, this was the first time in the 4 years of this project being proposed that health the thing about health was being inserted into it. Prior to this, the health was never inserted from nowhere. So we were able to provide what our EHAC members body to be supportive of that research to be added to this project. So Brian, Nicole, you have anything you want to add?
Well, I thought it was a good meeting. Ultimately, the community is quite often is outnumbered by agency staff, but many of the staff who were there had not really thought about these issues, had not really engaged directly as individual professionals in a community meeting like we held last night. So it was a very useful meeting, I think, all around. We want to have more expanded meetings in the future on this subject. There's a couple of years of work to do, and the agencies involved would like to work with West Oakland on this. I think it's hard to talk about what it was actually without presenting the slides that were relevant to that conversation. And so, I think we need to look at that in the future, and probably we've hit all the marks we can hit tonight on it. Thank you.
And I really do appreciate, and I said this last night, Gavin putting up with me, pushing and pulling, putting this puzzle together about the conversation about risk and exposure. And I'm really thankful that he finally be able to use that as part of some momentum for us to be able to start connecting. We as a community, we as West Oakland Environment Indicators around this issue of risk and exposure and relationship to public health, and also doing remediation on projects like this coming to West Oakland. It was never about just stopping the project. It was always about enhancing the project and make sure it was a healthy project. And I think we have now developed a baseline to start having that conversation with the different staffing for this project to move it forward as those creations that we as environmental justice people see that it should be happening, things that really contribute not to be harm to the community or whoever who wants to use that space.
Awesome.
Gavin, I'm gonna give you the closing word. You got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, I like I said, I think this is new for us. And so I think it's, as we kind of bring this into the project, we're also bringing in other people from the agency. So hopefully we're kind of elevating it, not just at the project level, but that these kind of concerns can start to seep into the bigger planning agency wide. So I think that, I think that it's a good, we're starting at a good base here. But hopefully it can really have impact beyond just the project itself, and we're going to work really closely with the West Oakland community to try and get this right, get this project right, make sure it is really beneficial to the community, and hopefully it can also be kind of a springboard for other future action.
I see your hand up, Wanda. You have something to add?
That was from before.
Sorry, no, Miss Margaret, lowering that hand.
Oh, okay. I see Alicia, you had a statement in the chat. You want to add something, you and Nicole?
Hi, Miss Margaret. Was not about the link though. Should I?
Yeah, separate conversation about indicators. So
okay, Nicole, you want to add anything?
I definitely appreciated Gavin and Joy Massey from Transform. The fact that both of them took a learner stance during this process with WOCAP, and both of them were eager and willing to learn and quick to recalibrate to make sure that they were on the right side of history. So I appreciate being able to work with Gavin and Joy during this process.
And I'm gonna say this here. At one point, I felt like I was in a place where I was trying to pull teeth out of a chicken. And everybody know chicken ain't got no teeth. It was a hard, I felt as though I was all along at one time, but feeling, but I also knew that I was on the road, I was on a trajectory, I was on the road on the right way. But at times, I'm telling you, I had sleepless nights, really trying to really put these pieces together to get this understanding about this, really honing in on about the risk and exposure. All right, so like I said, chicken ain't got no teeth, but I felt every pain that it was to be trying to get this momentum and getting clarification and the specifics about why we need to make the project better. And I want to thank everybody who supported. Those who are not here from Gavin, go back and tell your folks at MTC and Bay ATC that and the consultant that, hey, we got this momentum and we want to keep this momentum going. Because one of the things that did not part of the conversation, it was health in all projects, health in all policy. And that's one of the things that was also really, really, I wanted to put in the middle of the mix. And also I want to thank the EHAP people, Maria, Kelsey, and Rajan, to really wanted to step in to help us create this pathway. But we also want to, and people want the slides. We need to, is the slides gonna be on the website?
Yes, they're going to be posted on the website. So I will,
All slides.
I'll make sure it happens and I'll send an email.
All right.
Thank you.
I can
Thank
put
you,
them in
Laura.
the chat right now too, the slides we presented.
And also, Maria and I have been asked to come to a national workshop on traffic-related air pollution.
Awesome. Okay. Good deal. So thank you. Thank you for the comments in the chat. I'm going to be, there's some from like kind of previous items. I'm going to be reaching back to you on some of those. Once again, for anybody who came in after the sign in, there's a sign in right there. Please sign in so we can keep track of you. And then we're going to move. We were going to pull out some segments, but we know how humble and shy Miss Margaret is. And so these were two items. The KQED segments were really great. This on the toxic sea level rise. And so there's two pieces. There was a great piece on September 13th. And then she was on this morning on Forum and with a couple of other guests. And that was a really good showing as well. So these links, you can either search them or these links will also be in the slide deck. And we are 3 minutes. We got 3 minutes left. Thank you all. If there are no parting words, we're going to close out. Really appreciate your time, efforts, input. We're going to kind of turn some of this stuff around. And we look forward to talking to you all next month. Same bat time, same bat channel. With a full 2.5 minutes to spare. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Randolph.
All right.
Thanks, Randolph.
Yeah, thanks, and bye, everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night, all.
I think so.